Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this webinar, Migration Zero, Build a Successful Integration Platform Strategy. My name is Dennis Zachariasen, and I'm from BizBrains, and this guy next to me is...
Mikkel Iversen from Redpill Linpro today.
Good to see you again, Mikkel.
Yep.
It's been a while.
It has been, yep. Thank you, Dennis. Always nice to do these things with you guys.
And you're the one doing most of the talking. At least that's the plan. I'll try and stay in the background and also and that's for you guys. You're very, very welcome to post questions, and you do that by going into the Zoom panel called Q&A and post your question there. And then I have a screen right outside the viewing area here, and I'll keep an eye on the Q&A panel, and I'll bring it into the discussion whenever it fits. Or otherwise, we will try and leave some time at the end for questions that we didn't take along. And also I have here, as what you see in my ear, is producer Mai, who is as usual producing the webinar, and she will also hopefully remind me if I forget to look at the Q&A panel. So with that said, Mikkel?
Yeah.
You can do the introduction, and I'll just change the PowerPoint.
Yeah, I'll do that. Well, I'm Mikkel Iversen, and some of you may know me already. We've been doing these talks for quite a while, and I've been in the integration space for like 15 years. In different companies, and since we spoke last time, we actually changed company. 2 years ago, we created something we called Venso Connect, dedicated to integrations, and by 1st of January, we were sold ourselves to Redpill Linpro, which was a perfect match. So now I have many good integration nerds to play around with. I'm super thrilled about that. And this is not going to be a commercial, but just a few words of...
Should I put on...
yeah, I think you should.
It's here. I think. Yeah.
There it is.
Okay, a little about
Redpill Linpro, because I'm super excited to be there. It's a Swedish company with subsidiaries around the country. You can see there's one in Denmark. There should actually be two, because with the purchase of Venso Connect, we also have an office in Aarhus now with 6 employees or something like that. Super dedicated to a lot of open source by history, and private cloud and all the stuff around that. Very technical place to be. So
a question, Redpill, I assume it's a reference.
It is. It's a good story, actually. Redpill Linpro, if you take the red pill, it's from the Matrix movies, which I think everybody in this space really likes.
Probably, yeah.
You remember the scene where Neo is presented with the blue pill and the red pill is the pill of truth. So that's the reason for that part of the name. That was the Swedish original company, and Linpro is from the Norwegian part, which was Linux professionals. So we got a lot of big beards and heavy metal T-shirts running around, and when you have those guys, you know, they know what how to do stuff. So that's super nice. The space is very much focused on digital integration with or innovation with integration at the heart of everything. These are some of the areas that we work with, and you could say integration is basically everywhere. Data and processes flowing between systems all around. So integration is really at the heart of digital innovation, and that is the reason we figured that the marriage between Redpill and Venso Connect was such a good one.
Sorry for this, but just my curiosity.
Yeah.
But it's not all about integration. Integration is a big part of what you do, but you do other stuff.
We do other stuff as well. We have a private cloud built on open source technologies situated in Norway, actually. So if you are worried about GDPR and the big hyperscalers, there is actually a good possibility to move into the cloud, but keeping it very
OpenShift
local.
or... Do you know what technology is?
We have to ask the guys in the heavy metal T-shirts about what exactly is under the hood of that one. So that's just one of the things that we got going. So it's an angled consultancy company, and looking at this innovation on a conceptualized deliveries. I mean, you and I, we've been in this space for so long, and often you go out to a customer saying, all right, I know this technical space, what do you want me to do? But I think a much better approach is, we tried this before, we think that these issues should be solved by doing this. So, and that's something I've been working with for a long time, and there are also a lot of ready delivery packages in Redpill Linpro. For instance, the API readiness methodologies. Well, everybody wants to do APIs first, but how ready are you actually to do it, and how to move forward? So instead of just starting to build APIs, which is good consultancy business, we often tend to take it a step back and say, okay, how do you actually, where are you and where do you want to go and why do you want to go there? And on this slide, we also have the Digital Integration Hub, which is at the center of my heart, working with integrations dedicated for more than 15 years. I think that the Digital Integration Hub is the answer to most of the problems.
The answer is Digital Integration Hub. What was the question?
Something like that.
Just a note here, because we did a session a long time ago, actually, but I believe it's on bizbrains.com, or at least it will be, so you could go back and have a look at that. Probably we'll also get to talk a little about it today, and hopefully maybe also in a future one. But there is
I think we should do webinar. One on what we have real case scenarios, saying customer had this issue, we solved it like this using the Integration Hub. That could be a potential next webinar for sure.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept.
Yeah. All right. So let's move forward to why we're actually here. So again, something about the areas that we work with. Everybody wants to do DevOps and customer experience and stuff like that. Customer experience, we also have a partnership with Salesforce, for instance, and do a lot of integrations to Salesforce. That is really one of the one that drives a lot of nice integration work. So, but the reason we are here is something we call Migration Zero. And the reason that is interesting is that you see a huge shift in technology platforms today. We just, I think it's around a month ago, Gartner came with a new Magic Quadrant on iPaaS solutions. Yesterday, Massimo Pezzini, former Gartner guy, walked through the process of making this and some of the results. It was a super interesting webinar. And what we saw there is that the market for iPaaS is growing rapidly, but also the what I call the width of capabilities of these iPaases. So they're taking over a lot of other areas that you normally have another platform to do, like ETL or robotics and stuff like that. So I think you can say that the iPaaS area, and for those who don't know, iPaaS is integration platform as a service. So it's like you have your your BizTalk, you have your SAP PO, other on-premise systems that are not just moved into the cloud, but built in a completely different way. So you get a lot of running updates, new features very often. It's a completely different way of working, much nicer, much faster, but obviously also with some issues. And previously we've done a lot of migrations. And to be honest, the way we used to start over that was, okay, we have this system, we need to go to this one. Let's just start rebuilding mindlessly. And that was extremely good business for a consultant because there went so many hours into it, but you rarely had very happy customers when doing so. So some time back, a colleague and I, we sat back and said, okay, now we've done so many migrations and we've seen the same thing go wrong again and again. How do we do this in a better way? Can we make a model and a methodology that sort of ensures or at least heightens the chances of success, and possibly also make this from a purely technical project into something that is actually value-adding? And
can I ask, yes, value-adding to whom?
To those, not only with the pain, but also with the checkbook. Because the thing is, often integration is living close to the seller, right? It's a very technical discipline, and it's often seen as a cost. It's often not seen as a value driver, which is a shame because, again, I think you usually say that, well, in any digital company, the heart of the digital landscape is not the ERP system anymore. The heart is the integration system, right?
Exactly, and I got that quote from a guy who is actually, I consider, an ERP guy.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting quote, and the reason I just asked is that you're touching on something that is, I don't know what a kæphest is in English, stick horse. I don't think it means the same, but something that is very important to me and to my company, that is actually to try and bring the value not only to the IT guys and give them like a nice tool to work with, but also to bring that value into the business if possible. And I think that is actually possible if you do it right.
It is, for sure. So enough lingering around. The Migration Zero consists of basically a process. So these are the phases that we'll go through in detail. So instead of just starting from the left and starting migration, we have these 4 phases that we are going through. And I think the reason that actually we are here today is that a lot of your customers are looking into, we need to do a migration because BizTalk is going out of service. What do we do? And this caters for a lot of those questions.
Yeah,
so,
and as you mentioned, that's pretty much the case all around. We're moving from the servers to the
iPaaS.
Exactly. iPaaS also. We have SAP PI. Probably I might ask that later.
Yeah.
How about MuleSoft that I know you're very much into?
Yeah.
But I think it's
a
movement
trend
across
the
technologies.
Exactly. So these 4 balls is basically representing the process, and you have these sort of stop signs between analysis and scope and workshop, for instance, and that means that each delivery is a secluded delivery. That means that you can just say, okay, I want you guys to help us with the analysis, then we do the report, and then you take it from there. I want analysis, scope, and workshops, we take it from there. Or Migration Zero, we usually get all the way to Migration Zero, but it's phased. And then the actual migration, you can do that yourself, or shore it to the Philippines or wherever you have your center for that. So there are a lot of check marks, go, no go, and some value add in each phase. So if we look into what the Migration Zero actually consists of, we start out with a lot of pre-work because an on-premise integration platform is usually something that has been there for a long time. There's been many different developers on it. There's probably different governance traces built into the platform. So we need to get a clear view on what is it actually that we are looking into. So usually we get a log on actually to the platform, and if it is something that we haven't worked on before, like Sterling or some other side product, we usually have a session where some of my consultants or myself is introduced to the Sterling platform. How do you navigate this? That's usually pretty fast. If you know your way around an integration system, that is easily done. But it's a way to sort of start to get into, okay, how many processes do we have? Do we have lookups and all these things that's just not point to point, because point to point is one thing, but there's a lot of complexity built into all these integration flows. So we need to do that, and we need to structure the information. Sometimes you can draw out a lot of this information from the system and put them into some sort of spreadsheet, but you always need to add on to categorize your integrations.
I have a question.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, and maybe you will get back to this, but otherwise, I was just curious as to this phase. You said, yeah, you can easily get an intro to something that you don't know. You mentioned IBM Sterling as an example, because it's not so much used here in Europe, but we see it sometimes, especially in the American companies. But that's not the point. But the point is that you get this intro, but I just think, won't you have to involve the guys who are used to work with this also in this phase to really know what's going on?
Obviously we do, and the more the merrier, basically. But the thing is that these guys are always extremely busy, and having a migration on top of that usually just makes them go completely pale. So it's actually a matter of taking as much work away from these guys so they can continue adding value on their day-to-day job, and then having sort of like pressure tests with these guys. We found out this. Is this correct? Is there something we have overlooked? And then usually there is something we have overlooked. And they say, look at this, this, and this. Then we go back. And so there's something back and forth for that. But there's nothing in this that usually the customers can't do themselves. We're just used to do it. We have an accelerated model. And we have some resources because these guys are always super.
And you drive
busy.
the process.
Exactly.
I assume that's a huge element because I just get, if I was the customer, I would say, yeah, okay, but it's not enough with this quick introduction. You have to use our guys, but if they can show up and they are not responsible for setting up the meetings and driving the process, then I think it is probably realistic.
Exactly, and we get this brain dump without them doing all the manual work, and that works really, really well. Okay. So there's an outcome of this, and we started having a landscape overview. All right, who and which systems are we actually communicating with, on what protocols, and all these, the technical overview. What is it, the beast that we're looking into? What is that? And then we get this integration inventory, and that's super important. All the source systems, target systems, all the messages going through, what protocols, what complexity. We do an initial complexity rating on all these integrations, and that's super important because the integration inventory is the central tool for all the rest of the migrations. And then we do a capability overview, both from a technical point of view and organization point of view, because we don't want to own the coming platform. It's very important that the guys we talked about before in the organization gets an ownership of the new platform, and also what is the old platform capable of doing, and how do we map that into the capabilities of the new platform. So there's a lot of overview and sort of, okay, now we have a picture of the beast. That's what we do in the analysis. Then we have scope and workshops, because that is the first part is sort of the as is. This is where we come from, and normally it's not a good idea to just mindlessly take what you have, move it into some iPads, and then say, all right, we're done. So we need to sort of look into how do we actually do this in a different way. So from the beginning we do actually a pre-estimation with the inventory. We say, okay, this kind of integration with this complexity, that gives this score, like 6 hours to migrate. And then we have 4 or 5 categories, which we put on all the integration flows, and then you actually have a score in the bottom. This project will take this long time. And then we also started looking into, okay, this is an old platform. There has been a lot of different governances, naming conventions, stuff like that. You can really see some messed up stuff around. And that's not because people are messy. It's just because time evolves and time moves, and you get different consultants, different needs. So instead of just moving from one to one, how do we consolidate? How do we do it better? How do we make it into a new and more manageable platform? We really need to look into that.
I don't know if this is the right timing, but I'm thinking that you said you don't want to map it because there are some differences between, I guess you could call it maybe a ESB style or EAI style. This we know from BizTalk and PI and all, and probably also MuleSoft in older versions. But could you say something about the main differences between like a modern iPaaS and this old style? What? Because there must be a lot of new opportunities. For instance, I know that I can really confirm that this, if you look at an old platform that has been maybe built on for 10, 15 years, maybe even more, then you have traces from, ESB was the thing, we do something about that. Yeah. Then something else, and human workflow and so on, and all these things are built into the good old platform. Yeah. But and that's really not one-to. You don't want to do one-to-one with that.
Definitely not.
But could you say something about what is when is it hard to map from the old to to use the new? Because if you redesign too much, then you also involve maybe the business process and the business people, and then it blows up.
Yeah.
So how do you find out?
Two things. First of all, you need to be very mindful of your actual goals of doing this, because some of the iPasses are very much into this citizen integration notion that some of the technical work can be moved out to business people and other places than just the techies. And that can work, but you really need to be mindful of the change management process in that, and you really need to make sure that is actually something that the business wants to do. Because, to be honest, we've tried the citizen integration bit quite a lot, and as a very good sales point on the platforms. But the truth is that often the business people says, integration, that's not our issue. That's you guys, go fix it. So that. I
think that's a whole topic on its own,
it is,
and at least I've noted it here. And if we have time, we will get back to it.
Yeah.
But I was more interested in the things that you actually recommend from these new iPasses that can be hard to like do a one-to-one is mapping to.
Yeah. For instance. Many of the old integrations do not consider APIs at all, for instance.
Yeah. At least not REST.
That is definitely not REST. And looking into how could we API enable this flow, or even better, event enable the flow. I'm super happy about the event architecture, because you get the best from both synchronous and asynchronous integrations built into to the handshake on event-driven architecture. So, but you also have to be mindful again, because doing so take some extra time. Maybe you need to involve the business more.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to be sure that if we do this, then there's a value add into it. And sometimes you see that I had one place I worked with, we had like 8 different orders, IDOCs, going out of the same ERP system into different flows. It was very complex to maintain, and completely stupid that you had all these different IDOCs just pushing through the same channels. So in that case, it would be a very good idea, for instance, to use the digital integration hub to event enable these flows, and then on top of that, API enable some of this, because it was a huge chunk of integrations that was built like mushrooms. Just now we have this need, then we do it like this, and sort of consolidating that solution, because that proved to be very central for this company, that the order flow was just going in many different directions. So. Mapping into new technologies, because you can do the ESB sort of integrations on an iPass usually. So when you look into doing a redesign, you need to look at the business value of doing that, because there's a lot of funny stuff that you, as a technician, you can do, but you're often not getting very many points on doing it because it's funny.
Tricky question here from the critical journalist.
Yeah.
You mentioned these your nice colleagues with the beards and the heavy T-shirts.
Yeah.
How do you balance that? I imagine that they like to do the new and interesting stuff. At least the guys I know of that kind. And you are talking about keeping an eye on the business value.
Yeah.
Is that easy to balance?
The focus is very much on delivery, speed of delivery, and if you have that as a target point, that's very motivating for a team. Okay, how many integrations can we deliver in production every week? I'll get back to that in the end, how we actually run the actual migration. But if you have too much time to sort of gold plate a solution, that's what you do, right? But if the main focus is we need stuff put into production, see it work every week, that gives a super good energy into a project that the guys with the beers and the heavy T-shirts can also tap into. So that's, I think, the solution on that one. All right. So, but it's not that you can't do it. You just need to be mindful of the value that you're adding. Anyway, we get this detailed integration inventory for planning and prioritization. When should we do what, and in what order should we actually do these migrations of the different integrations? And then we actually get a score for the migration zero. We think this will take so long time to get from here to here, and different categories have these these values. And now I like to derail a little bit from the generic presentation, because this is with BizBrains, who has a lot of BizTalk customers. So let's look into how do you make a move from BizTalk to Azure. A lot of people are looking at that because that's what you do. If you're a Microsoft-heavy company, you move from BizTalk to Azure. And then again, you have to look at, do we recreate or modernize? And if you recreate, then this list is nothing I came up with myself. It's something I stole with pride from Microsoft. You could do everything you do in BizTalk, you could do that in Logic Apps. And then there's a translation of exactly. That's the point. If you look at
that, that's Microsoft marketing you are quoting right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, okay.
But basically, the Logic Apps is a very powerful tool, and I'm happy about many of the functionalities in that. So if you want just to recreate, you can get a long way just with the Logic Apps, possibly with functions as well. And if we had Pau here, he would spend the rest of the webinar talking about that.
Yeah, he would be talking for an hour now just about this, exactly. What you can't do. Yeah. But let's leave that discussion
exactly.
to another time.
So if we look at some of the other things from the Azure stack in the integration space, because in my mind, actually, having Azure in the leading quadrant of the iPaaS thing from Gartner is actually a bit strange, because in my mind, Azure is not an iPaaS. You can use it as an iPaaS, but you have to. There's some assembly required to do that, because you have a lot of extremely powerful tools, but you have to figure out how to use them, when to use them. So in that case, it's more
a toolbox.
It's a toolbox more than a platform, basically. But
yeah.
In that platform, you have these event enablers, the event grid and the event hub, super powerful, super good to use if you want to go down that route. Very good API management to expose your and manage. That's the important thing about API management. That is to manage the APIs, keeping them secure, keeping your backend secure, all that stuff. Then you have the Logic Apps, where this is where you do the integration, transformation, monitoring of data flows, all that stuff. It's again very powerful and fairly easy to get into. There's a lot of click and flow logic into this.
And expensive. And hard to manage.
And that is why we get to that in just a while. Then we have the orchestration queuing mechanism of the service bus, and then we have the functions. And the functions is basically just code that you can deploy into Azure. And the way we often do this, if not so often in migration, but in a new implementation, we often build stuff in Logic Apps, because it's fast to change, and you can sort of build the flow there, and now we need to add this, and you can sort of change it along the way without destroying too much. But often, if it's something that runs a lot, and you can see the cost pattern starts to accelerate, we rewrite the Logic App into a function. It works extremely well, and yeah. So that's sort of a way to use some of these tools. All right, so that's one of the decisions you need to make if you want to go from BizTalk to Azure is recreate or modernize, and when to modernize and when to recreate. You have to be pretty mindful and systematic about that, because you cannot have a developer doing this decision by himself. You need to make a rule book on how to do that and when to do that, and we'll make that rule book in the actual Migration Zero.
I'm happy to hear, because the not so unusual thing is to after doing this is to end up with huge bunch of Logic Apps that are not easy to manage, and maybe some are kind of doing the same,
and that's what happens when you don't use Migration Zero.
Okay, and I don't know. This is the only technology example, because or is it?
No, I'll get into some of the other platforms.
Okay, then I won't ask.
No, well, but there's something else that you need to look into. Again, the issues and the problems of the technician is usually some other issues than the guy with the checkbook has. So if you want to move this into something that drives business and changes business, you have to have a strategy session and looking into, okay, where are we on our digital transformation? We know that the integration platform is a central part of the digital transformation. But is there any known issues around not only the integration platform, but some of the issues or the topics that the integration platform solves, like data readiness? Are you able to get your data and processes available for your new products? That's always an issue. So looking into the digital transformation, saying, okay, when we move into the iPaaS, how do we ensure that we get to a better place so we enable digital transformation using the new integration platform? This is a super important topic because quite easily, often you can show some really tangible business value if you do this right.
But how about all these different systems that are part of the landscape, and that you are now you're changing the way they are connected?
Yeah.
But there's not necessarily a project of changing anything in these systems, and they are, at least many times, they have a little integration. A part of the ERP, the VMS, the CRM is an integration part, and you have to decide whether to use what they have or say to the guys handling for instance, the VMS, where we have to do a little change here, or so how do you look at that? Because they might not have the time or the budget, or
if they don't want to do the change,
see the value.
Yeah, exactly. Then you just do a one-to-one conversion, but you then expose the process or the objects through a digital integration hub or through an API or something like that. Because again, coming back to the example of the 6 or 8 order side docs going out of SAP, you know this is critical to the business. You know that this is something that is used all around, both externally and internally. Then you do an event enabling of your order flow. Maybe there isn't a consumer in the beginning, but while you are rebuilding the connections that you have, it would be stupid not to take the advantage of you're already messing with this, event enabling it, maybe expose it as an API, sort of, so the next time they do a VMS upgrade, instead of just recreating the same file-based crappy integration, saying, okay, we could just reuse the old crappy integration, but because we're clever and we did this the right way, how about you get it event based or using an API that brings you to a completely different place, out of the seller and into a value-adding partner to the business. Super important. All right. That actually is a good segue to landscape transformation, because if you know that you're looking into changing your VMS system, then you might want to couple the move of the VMS integrations into a timeline that fits with the VMS transformation project. Or if you are on a cloud move, then there's a lot of stuff that you need to be mindful about. And in that case, the things you choose for Migration Zero is something that you make sure, okay, we can talk to AWS or Google Cloud or Salesforce Cloud or whatever cloud. So you sort of get that part, those strings done, and you get tested. How much time does it actually take to call Salesforce and do a Salesforce integration if we're moving in that direction? All right? Then you have your current integration strategy. Are we going into citizen integration? Are we going into a very centralized center of excellence? Or are we going into a more diverse agile setup? Again, Massimo talked a lot about these different ways of organizing your integration capabilities in your company. This also needs to be considered when doing the Migration Zero, because, again, we are not the only ones doing the Migration Zero. I'm very happy if the customer puts in one or two of their own guys to participate in this, because nobody is successful if you becomes dependent on us in the end. We need ownership internally, all right? And finally, platform selection. We talked a lot about BizTalk to Azure, but there are, I think, more than 2,000 different iPaaS options out there. Only a very few of those.
2,000?
Yeah. It's there is.
There must be a lot of small ones.
There's a lot of very use case specific ones. And then there's a lot of startups having some very own something to show.
How many big ones would you say there? Like,
how
ones
many
that have more than like 2% of the market?
more than 2% of the market.
Quite big ones. You have Azure. You have.
I didn't bring the quadrant. I think, and for instance, Informatica is out now because you can't buy the iPaaS option only from them.
You have to buy the whole suite.
There are different ones. I think in Denmark. Actually, we'll get back to that. I have a technology platform selection slide just coming up.
Okay.
Because that is actually quite important. Maybe Azure is the right thing when going away from BizTalk. It could be, but there are other options, and there are a lot of very different capabilities that you and issues with all the different platforms. And personally, I've worked a lot with the SAP, with Boomi, with MuleSoft, and with Azure, and I think those are the predominant ones in Denmark. So I've been around. And I have some quite clear ideas on when to use which of these platforms. All right. So now we're actually at Migration Zero. So what is that? Well, in Migration Zero is a very limited implementation of the actual migration. So we, depending on the scope, we do this in 1 or 2 sprints. So the whole Migration Zero is something that takes like 6 to 8 weeks. So it's not a huge undertaking, but it brings you to a completely different level of knowledge. So depending on how many integrations that we figure, we need to do a cross section of the entire project, and that's basically the whole idea. We have this big project, but if we do like a cross cut into it and see all the difficult parts in this migration, we'll get a lot of the learning pushed very early into the stage, and preferably we'll actually go live with these integrations, because to be honest, we often only see the problems in the go live situation. So we go through the complete migration project with a very limited scope of integrations, and often our suggestion is do something different and do something difficult. So you don't only do SAP to VMS integrations. You do one of those. Then you have one to your web shop, and then you might have an easy integration also, because you need to know a point-to-point integration with a simple transformation. How long time does it take to make this migration? So actually get a really good idea to your CFO. What will it cost to do this? And that can sometimes be very surprising, how fast you can do it, and also how much many issues that you can have. Because we've been in this space a long time, and we all know that when you're at the end of a project, everybody breathes out and says, had we only knew. If we knew that this was such a huge issue, we would have done the project in a completely different way. That's just how it is running projects. But doing the cross-cut of it, we take a lot of that, had we only known, into a very early stage of the product or project. And that is a foundation for our migration handbook. So again, technology choices. How do we do point-to-point integrations? When do we do improvements? How does the naming standard look? All this stuff is quite thoroughly documented into a migration handbook, because it's very, very important that everybody does it the same way. So we get away from all these different developers over time, and you actually can take this development handbook, give it to your offshore team, and have them run 80% of the project. I would never recommend to have them do the complete project, but up to 80% is a very good idea to do in a, should we say, lower cost country.
I'm trying to limit my question asking here, because time flies, but I have to ask this one. You say you're going into production.
Yeah.
But we're also now choosing the technology. So we are doing that with each one.
Yeah. And that brings me to my next slide, because if you don't know, if you're not sure that you have an Azure-only strategy, then in my mind, it's a good idea to look into some of these other products. Azure, Boomi, MuleSoft, Link, which is your product. Maybe we should get a little back to that. AWS, you could actually also do it on there. SAP has a very good cloud integration platform now that has really moved a lot, and a lot of other platforms. In my mind, if you're in doubt, I've done a lot of these selections and have a methodology of how to score different needs and all that stuff. But if you end up in doubt, should we go Azure or MuleSoft, for instance? Then instead of sitting and doing a table exercise, often you can talk to the vendor of this product saying, okay, we want to try this and we want to go live with this. And we want the licenses, if not for free, then at a very low cost and a very get out of license free option, because this is part of our selection. We want to see it working in real world, and we want to have our own gritty hands on it, because one thing is the sales situation. Some of these platforms are extremely good at making everything look very simple. You want to go from Salesforce to whatever, click, 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 there it is.
Boomy.
For instance, in reality, it almost never works like that. I mean, there are simple integrations, and then it's just click, 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 and that's almost the case in any of these platforms. But when it comes to complexity, and integration is a complex topic, that's why we love it so much. What's complex is complex in any platform. You cannot magically make complexity disappear, but the platforms handles complexity very, very differently. Can you do code inline in your process flows? How can you add to the technology adapters? All that stuff is super important to know, and you'll only get your hands gritty enough when you actually start working on that in your own platform.
I'm keeping an eye on time here, and I'm actually, I have a lot of questions, and we have here on your slide, you have 6 different, and thanks for including us in with the big guys, but you also have the 3 dots, and as you said, there are actually 2,000. So I think we should actually consider doing a webinar where we dive into the ones that we know, and we might call up some guys who knows something that we don't, and do this comparison, because I think it is such an interesting topic, especially if as we must assume that our audience today are considering changing platform. It's nice to see this this process, but it would also be nice to see, okay, which maybe 2, 3, 4 should we actually probably be doing this POC, getting to production with, who are the
I would be very
candidates.
It's a very good idea, Dennis, and also, and that's important to state also. There's no right fit for everyone. Someone would be very happy to use Azure or Boomi or Mule, but it depends a lot of where you are and where you're going, and the strategy you have with your platform, because they have their own strengths and they have their own weaknesses, to be honest. Also with Link, I'm quite fond of Link as a product for some things, so you could consider that as an option in certain cases, right?
Yeah, of course, because one of the big questions is, we have a lot of B2B, like pretty classic B2B, EDI, API, and cross-company stuff. Yeah. And then we have all this IoT and hybrid and whatnot. Is that 2 platforms, or is it 1 platform? That's also maybe something for that webinar to look at.
Exactly.
Which platforms are like good on their own and good with another one. And also, if some of you are wondering what is this Link thing, it's actually the whole purpose of Link is to add value to the business. That was why I asked about that earlier on, because most of these platforms, they primarily live in IT, and then what we try with Link is to bring the everyday work with integrations out in the business, and Link can do that, especially with B2B integrations, and it can also do it together with Azure, MuleSoft, AWS, and so on. But that's a whole other story, and if you were wondering what is this Link thing.
Let's dive into that on a...
We can take that...
different episode,
in another episode.
Exactly.
So please continue. You have 2 minutes.
Very short time, and just in the end, when you actually do the migration. Now we have the migration handbook, we have the integration inventory. We know how to do this. And then how do we actually do it? And in our world, we actually run 3 phases at the same time. We do design, migrate, and launch in sprints. And the way we do that, we have sprint in, and before we are in the actual implementation, we do the preparation for the next spring. So we design, and we migrate, and we launch within the same sprint. So we usually launch on Mondays, and then we have hypercare, and at the same time we have design sessions for the next sprint. and we have actually built time for the current sprint. So we continuously working our way through the integration inventory, also learning and making sure that we update the migration handbook. That's very important. We don't get all the knowledge in the migration zero, but we get a lot of it. So that's actually the way to do the migration. That is running these 3 phases in each and every sprint. All right, I think that's the last one, and we have 1 minute left. So
nice done. So, and I have a lot of questions, and we don't have time for that. But we'll set up another. And so make sure to subscribe to our newsletter. It's called, and that's where you see upcoming webinars. We have the next one is actually about if you want to move from SAP PI and legacy SAP stuff to integration suite, SAP integration suite, then we have some good advice around that. It's not active on our webpage yet, but I was just told a minute ago that it's almost there. So the best way is to sign up to the newsletter. You will get notified, and also you will get notified when we have something coming up, and we will. We are going to talk about low-code and citizen integration, and you mentioned this Massimo guy. We'll put a note on that document and where to find that, and maybe we could have him on as a guest.
That would be awesome. Yeah,
because he really knows a lot about it.
He's
used to be with Gartner and is now with
himself and in different positions.
Okay,
and please. Will also send out my contact info, but reach out on LinkedIn if you want to know more. I'm happy to travel the world talking about this. This is really a passion of mine.
I also noted RPA. We are also going to talk about RPA because I used to bring out the white onions and the crosses and so on, but maybe we shouldn't do that. No. That's a topic.
A lot of the iPads are actually adding RPA capabilities into the iPads platform, which is super interesting because it was like in the old days when you had business intelligence and integration. When they both move data, when should you use what? It's exactly the same with RPA, but having it in one platform under one governance, then we can start to talk about it.
Let's talk about that also in another episode.
A lot of episodes coming.
That was it for today. Thank you for watching, and hopefully we see you next time. Bye-bye.
Talk to you.